this lesson, we're talking about fonts, why they're important, and how to choose them for your site. Fonts give your visitors clues about the tone of your site. They can make your site look serious or whimsical or edgy or casual or sophisticated. They will communicate these qualities whether you like it or not, so you may as well be intentional about it. We're going to choose 3 fonts for the text on our site. One for headers, one for subheaders, and one for body text. We'll start with body text because this is the most important font choice. We want your body text to be as easy as possible to read so that no one is put off reading what you have to say. Researchers have actually studied the readability of different fonts, and they have found that on the web, sans serif fonts are far easier to read than serif fonts, especially for people with reading difficulties like dyslexia. Serif fonts are the fonts with the little lines at the end of each character. I think of those little lines as being like the curly bits on the edge of a sheriff's hat. They work great in print, but they just don't work that well on the web because screens have a far lower resolution than print. Sans serif fonts don't have these extra lines for your brain to process, and so they are faster and easier to read. I strongly recommend that you choose a sans serif font for your body text so that you don't make your readers work too hard and go away. Now, for the header and subheader fonts, we can get a little more creative. The only requirements are that they are web safe, meaning that they can show up on your website without the user having to install the font. To make sure we only choose fonts we can use on the web, we'll be finding our fonts in Google Fonts. Google has compiled an enormous directory of fonts to use on your website and has made it easy to search in typical Google style. You can find it at google.com/fonts. I provided the link below this video. A great technique you can use to give your site more personality is to pair contrasting fonts for the header and subheader. You may recognize this technique from magazines. For contrast, we would use a thick font next to a thin font, or a serif font next to a sans serif font. You'll want to use the more eye-catching font as your header, so that we can start to create an obvious hierarchy on the page. Font pairing is a tricky art, but you can find a whole page of examples linked below for inspiration. So now, head on over to the font pairing inspiration page and then choose your body text font, a header font, and a contrasting subheader font over at Google Fonts. If you aren't familiar with installing fonts on your computer, you can also watch the tech training in this section. You don't strictly need to install the fonts on your computer, since the fonts will only be used on your website. But you might want to have them on your computer if you ever want to incorporate them into graphics. And now is a good time to install them while you're looking around in Google Fonts. See you in the next lesson.